Welcome to another episode of the Mr. Mindful Minute podcast, where we touch on different things of different areas of life. We could go from a nothing place to something place. And today we have a special guest. I'm going to let her herself. Please tell the people who you are and what it is that you do.
Hi, Mr. Mindful. My name is Kesha Jackson, also known as the Confidence Converter. I am a confidence coach as well as a licensed therapist here in the state of Pennsylvania. My goal is to enrich, empower, and encourage women from ages 18 to 50 plus on how to build their confidence, how to move forward with their self-esteem. That's basically what I do in my line of work. Even as a therapist, most of the time I feel like if a person doesn't have confidence in what they're attempting to do, then it's not going to work to begin with. So even in helping someone in the therapeutic area, if I can help to enrich their lives, encourage their lives, and give them some empowerment, then I feel like they'll be able to deal with whatever mental health issue that they've come to me to work out as well. Back to you.
Now, see, now that's powerful because you literally are bridging the gap between mental things and then what we do in our everyday life.
Correct.
I love that. I definitely love that. So, okay, was that transition easy for you from being a therapist and then being a coach?
So the therapy part of it comes relatively easy because that's based off of models. What I use with the life coaching part of it, a lot of it is based off of experience, even though I have a certification in life coaching, but I use things that have happened with me and where I felt like I needed a coach in order to build up my confidence. That's what I give to the women that I am doing any type of therapy or coaching with.
Okay. Now, I like the name Confidence Converter. Where did you come up with the name Confidence Converter?
So, so actually, I did a pivot. So before I was the confidence converter, I was the bullying coach. And so with my mental health, I dealt a lot with children who have been bullied because I was bullied myself as a child. And what happened was then I started getting placed into a box with only dealing with children. My issue with only dealing with children is that when I do therapy for children or I do life coaching for children, they still have to go back to the home environment where the problem is created. So I felt like it was better to deal with adults because when you deal with the adults, then they can model that different behavior for the children. So because I didn't want to just be known as the bullying coach, then I changed over to confidence converter. Also, like a lot of my friends, when we just have everyday general conversations, they're always like, you're so empowering. You just enrich my life just by being around you. So I would see their confidence begin to come up. And then I just decided, okay, so I'm taking a person from self-doubt to now living their life with confidence. And that's how Confidence Converter came about.
Oh, I love that. That is amazing. Um, so let me okay. Let's say, for example, I'm a person because I know you specialize in helping women. Let's just say, for example, you're helping me, and I say, man, I have a lot of issues with my own self doubt, right? Like, how do you identify the difference between low self doubt or confidence and low self esteem? Like, is there a difference between the two?
Not necessarily a difference between low self-esteem and low confidence. So confidence deals with your self-concept. It also deals with your self-esteem and it deals with your self-efficacy. So when you tie the three of those together, like your self-concept is all about how the conversations that you have with yourself, the things that you say about yourself. A lot of times we don't even recognize that we're talking to ourselves from a negative standpoint. Like people will walk around and say, I'm so fat. Or I'm so skinny. It doesn't even have to be something that everybody else says about you. It's what you're saying about yourself. So that's your self-concept. When we talk about your self-esteem, you take your self-concept, which are the things that you tell yourself, and then you evaluate yourself against somebody else. And the same thing with self-efficacy is about how well you feel like you can maneuver in certain situations. So when you tie all of those things together, I'm able to notice whether a person has low self-esteem or whether a person has high self-esteem, just based off of general conversation that I'm having with that person, or even watching a person and what they do, how they look at walk into a room and say, oh, well, I don't belong in this room. That's your self-efficacy and your self-worth right there. So that's how I'm able to identify whether a person has low self-esteem or low confidence. They're both the same.
Okay, I really value the aspect of how you just said it's almost like a trifecta type thing where you have to identify all three areas in order for you to come up with a real true answer. Because if you don't have all three of those parts together, and almost there's a missing link, and you'll identify some, but you won't be able to really target the real issue at hand.
Correct.
Okay,
and most of the time, those things come from either you being in toxic relationships, whether that comes from childhood or adulthood. A lot of times it is based from your childhood experiences, whether it's your parents, your caretakers, sometimes in the school setting, depending upon what your teachers say to you, because people don't recognize how long those things sit inside of your subconscious. And then it's like they go deeper and deeper and deeper the more relationships that you have in your life. So if you tend to stay in relationships, not just romantic relationships, just general relationships that are toxic, then you're not helping to build your self-esteem. You're actually making it worse. And then when you do that, then you go into that people pleasing, the anxiety, the depression. So so many things that's connected. And that's why I use mental health and life coaching together, because a person might come to me because they're having some anxiety or they're dealing with some codependency, but at the root of that, it has something to do with your self-confidence and your self-worth. What's making you stay in that relationship? What's making you not stand up for yourself? What's making you not go after the very thing that you want in life? So it's good for me to deal with both, and I'm glad that I'm versed in both. But for me, it's just a general conversation. When I talk to people, I'm able to get so much out of them, not even using the therapeutic tool, or they don't realize that I'm using the therapeutic tool because I'm just having a conversation with them.
Okay, so I hear so many different things when you are speaking, because you talk about relationships, and I like to get around that realm for a second, because I think that it's very important for us to identify the fact that relationships is not just romantic, it's not just a sexual thing. You have relationships with every single person, and it can be sexual, it can be non-sexual, it doesn't have to be perverted. And how you said, why do I stay in relationships that are toxic for us? Because there may be something that we have not identified that's making us connect to this relationship. And it's not even necessarily the person, it's the relationship and the toxicity have registered that as, oh, I need this, or this is normal, or this is helping me deal with some type of trauma that I had, and I'm not actually paying attention to the fact that that's why I'm doing it. So what are some tips that you would give a person to actually help them, pull away from a relationship like that? Because we fall back on what we know, not what we don't know. So if I'm used to getting to real toxicity, how do I actually do something different?
So one of the things that I would suggest is like asking yourself something like, is this helping me to feel better about myself? Or is this making me feel worse about myself? Is this building me up, or is this tearing me down? So, and I know that it sounds very simple, but it is just that simple. And that's the only way that I can break it down for a person. I'm a person that's not going to sugarcoat it. It's either you are or you're not. And I ask myself in certain situations, is this interaction, because I don't necessarily call it a relationship, is this interaction with this other person and the things that we're talking about or the things that we're doing, is this helping me or is this hindering me? And if I begin to see that it's hindering me, then it's something that I don't need to keep pouring my energy into. Is it easy to break away from that? No, it's not, because your traumas are very real. But the more you begin to work on yourself and first identify that you're even doing it, that's when you can begin to do the work to move away from it. So it's like I tell people to use a journal. How was your day? Go back and self-reflect on that. What did your day look like? Was your day uplifting or was your day pulling you down? And what types of interactions were you having? So when you notice what the problem is, then you can go and give a solution to it.
Now, I like how you said using journals for us to self-reflect. I'm real big on saying, oh, well, it's important for us to read one book that we can really writing in that book. So if we're writing in the book of self, it's going to help us or why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. And it's a daily thing that we should do, right?
I really love that when you say the book of self, because that's very important to know thyself. And I feel like when you do some self-reflection, then it's easier for you to learn and understand who you are first. Because nobody's going to be able to come in and do the work for you. I don't care how many therapists you go to, how many life coaches you go to, you still have to be responsible for doing the work yourself. And it starts with that self-reflection. So I definitely love when you talk about the book of self.
So, okay, if I'm an individual who has been denying that I'm in these type of atmospheres, and I start journaling, but again, we fall back on what we know, not what we don't know. What would be something that you would give if I was your client? What would be something that you would use to help me to actually kind of recalibrate, so to say?
So I'm very big on talking about self-help. So I would suggest certain books for you. Now, one of my biggest fans that has not only helped me in my personal experience, but that I use when I'm doing therapy as well, is any of the books on Iyanla Vanzant. I don't always like to go the full spiritual route and tell a person, oh, well, read the Bible or do this or whatever, because I have to gauge where a person is. But what I found with Iyanla's books on self-help is that she takes you from the beginning, from like real small baby steps. And then like as her books progress, then I found that people progress. So that would be one of the things. There's so many other different things that people can do, like watch a podcast. There's been times where I've even watched the podcast with my clients and then broken down the podcast to reflect on them, to help them to identify what's going on with them and how they can move from point A to point B. So those are the different tools that I start with. I mean, I have other tools in my repertoire, but my own programs, but that's where I start at. And a lot of times people don't understand who they are. So I'll use like little small things like, what's your favorite color? Why is that your favorite color? How does that color make you feel when you either wear it or when you see it? Because that's a part of your personality. And again, it starts with understanding who you are. So I try to, get into a person's head so that they can identify who they are. Things like, what types of eggs do you like? Most people don't even know what types of eggs they like. They'll go with whatever somebody else says that they should have. But when I really say, okay, well, how many times a week do you eat eggs? And out of that time, which one do you make the most? That's pretty much your favorite. So that's where I start at. Those are some of the tools that I would use with you.
So basically, as a little side note, she already told everybody, check out the Mr. Mindful Minute podcast. We already know you're watching it, but tell people about it because, again, these podcasts like this is going to help you, right? And so when we start asking ourselves some of the most basic questions, such as, what are different types of things that you like, I've found myself asking people the same thing, in my life coaching journey and saying, okay, what makes you who you are? And that's a very, very simple question, but it requires a very detailed answer because a lot of times what makes us who we are is usually attached to another person or another thing. And so if that person or that thing is removed, we like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I like because I was so immersed in this person or this thing. And so if they are removed from the equation, we now are at the beginning stage and we're trying to figure out who we are. So it's very important for us to make sure that we know what makes us us, and then now go from there, because you don't want to find yourself at a place where you don't know who you are, you don't know what you like, you don't know what you want to do, because you won't know how to actually create boundaries on doing things that you don't want or doing things that you don't like. And we know that it is difficult for us to create boundaries, especially with people who we are in close proximity to all the time. It's hard for us to create those boundaries because at some point, we all have a state of mind of people pleasing in some type of way. And it's not saying that people pleasing is 100% bad or it's 100% good. We have to find a balance. We're going to be like, hey, I'm going to appease you. And then there are times where I'm going to appease me. But we should
Right.
not be we should not be foregoing who we are to just appease others all of the time, because then you'll find yourself at that place where you're like, I'm never being who I want to be. I'm never doing what it is that I want to do. And that right there will make you have low confidence and low self-esteem because you're not being yourself.
And also, you'll begin to feel like you're pouring from an empty cup and like you're empty on the inside. Like, I have a lot of clients that come to me and say things like that, like they don't feel fulfilled. And I'm asking them, well, are you fulfilling your life or are you fulfilling someone else's life? So I've also come up with some
Mm.
different steps. Like, people have a real hard time being able to say no. So I give my clients one of my life experiences, which is about 25 years ago when I was in undergrad school, and I had to take this theater class just to be able to graduate. And I could not understand why this instructor would make us get up and say no with a partner at the beginning of the class. But as you begin to say no, then you begin to get comfortable with just saying it and comfortable with being able to hear it. And sometimes that's a very difficult thing, to be able to say no to somebody, because you don't want that conflict. You don't want that person to not like you. So that's when the boundaries start to get skewed. And then, like you said, you're appeasing that other person over appeasing yourself. And it has to be some type of balance. You don't have to be no, 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 no all the time, but understand that the more that you tell another person yes, you are actually telling yourself no. And who's more important? In certain situations, you have to begin to tell yourself yes and let that person be okay with you saying no to them. Like, and then I ask clients, I say, gauge how you feel when you actually do something for someone that you don't want to do. Then you become irritable, and then you become angry, and you shed that irritability off on someone who doesn't even deserve it, because you're not able to be content with being able to say no to somebody. Sometimes it's okay. It's okay to say no. You can't be in all places at all times. Balance.
Now, now that is a very, very difficult one, because when you say you're telling others no, I mean, yes, you're telling yourself no. And we know that, but it can be very hard to, tell others no when you're so used to telling them yes. And then you can replay in your mind, man, I don't want the relationship to change from me telling them no, because I know that I created a relationship where I'm always telling them yes. So what would you say a person could do to make themselves more comfortable? Because that's what it is. We're not comfortable with saying no. So what could I do to tell someone no to make me comfortable to tell them?
So, one, you can either start practicing no in the mirror. You can start writing down the word no several times. So that repetitive thing then begins to get in your self-conscious, and then it's easier for you to be able to say no. Some of the other things that I suggest is coming up with affirmations where you're saying no without saying no. So I'm very big, like you, on affirmations. I love affirmations. I am like, so before Being Mary Jane came out, I was the post-it queen. Like, I would have post-its all around me for different things that I know that I needed to work on. So I tell my clients the same thing: get some post-its, keep them around you. Use your affirmation journal where you can take that negative statement that you just made and then turn it into a positive statement. So for example, you can say something like, I really, really, really would like to come and visit with you today. However, I have some things that I need to do that's not going to allow me to do that. But that takes practice. So again, you have to start with some baby steps and make it so that it fits you and your personality. So again, it's work that you have to do. I can give you some suggestions, but you still have to be able to implement that.
I understand that. And so you talking about affirmations, right? And the first thing that sticks out in my mind is, yes, affirmations is what we see, but affirmations is also what we say. And then me specializing in affirmations is also what we feel. And
Correct.
so when we start making sure we are doing these practice sessions, as you're saying, I look at that as you're doing some type of visualization to see yourself telling someone else, oh, no, who are you telling no to? Oh, I'm telling no to my mom. But I see myself telling no to my mom. Okay, how is she going to respond when I tell her no? Okay, I know she's going to respond like this. So maybe I need to change how I say no. As you said, tailor it to you. That's going to make the situation not just uncomfortable for you, but also easy for you to digest within yourself, so you can make it easy for them to digest, because it's going to be a change up for the other person as well.
But also, like, a lot of people get stuck on what the other person's response is going to be. So like when I'm doing practice sessions with some of my clients, I'll tell them to remove yourself from the other person's response, because you're not responsible for their response. You're responsible for your feelings and your emotions. So if you can connect with and identify with how you're feeling and not worrying about, okay, but this person is not going to like me, or this person is not going to like what I just said to them. Just worry about how you're feeling when you say it. So if you're feeling good that you're able to get it out, then hear what the other person is saying, but don't hear what the other person is saying. And that's easier for you to begin to put it into your life. That's a good way for me.
Now, okay, because I heard what you said. Don't necessarily get ourselves caught up on what the other person is, going to be feeling, or what they're going to say. Like, I'm big on saying, like, say how you feel, not what you think other people want to hear. And, a lot of times that's a place that we come from. We come from the place of what we think they want to hear. So I'm going to just tell you what I think you want to hear, because if I say what I really want to say, I think I want to deal with how you may get. So,
but then you have to be true to your own identity as well, because we're moving more in a direction of that, moving away from that people pleasing. So when you start connecting to how a person is going to feel or what a person is going to say, then that's still you trying to please that other person over you pleasing yourself. And then again, be in tune with how you feel when you do that. Does it make you feel good?
What's something that I could do that is going to help me be in tune with me to actually express that? So like, I know a technique that I have done and even used with some of my clients. When I had my coach, they used to say, like, put your hand on your heart, close your eyes, and then say exactly how you feel, because you're removing, the visualization of what you're seeing. So what's something that you could say that would help a person to be able to do that?
So actually what you just said to me is a form of meditation when you put your hand on your heart. So it's not like a regular meditation where you're like, and you're just pushing away all your thoughts. Meditation can come in different forms. Even affirmations are some form of a meditation itself. So I like that idea when you say, close your eyes, put your hand on your chest, begin to feel how you're feeling. So if you just sit quiet for like 2 minutes and then visualize yourself talking to that person like you just said, then you can begin to, like, you have to like tune yourself into the muscles that you're feeling. So even like now, as I'm talking to you, even though my eyes are open, I could feel what's going on here in my shoulders. And again, that takes practice, but if you don't ever start it, then you're never going to know what it's like. So even if you can't feel it in the beginning, stick with it. it usually takes about 90 days before something becomes a behavior. So if on day one, if you don't feel it, keep going to day two. What I usually try to tell my clients is that one is always greater than zero. So even though you don't get to something on the day that you want to get to it, if it takes day 2, 3, 4, 5, as long as you get there, you're still doing better than what you did yesterday. And that's it. That's the baby steps.
I love it. I love it. Listen, that is amazing. The way that I see how you help people is really life changing, because, especially now after, we in this COVID and things like that, and mental health is very, very important. More people is seeing that, ever since the pandemic and everything has happened, the suicide rate actually has risen a lot higher. And so it's important for us to know these different techniques that is going to help us to be more in tune with our mental and our emotional. That way we can actually do what we need to do in the physical. So I really appreciate everything that you're doing to help people. So let me ask you this question. Is there anything that you would like people to know from taking away from it? Is there something that you want them to know?
One of the biggest things that I would say is have some grace with yourself. I think that as humans, we are so hard on ourselves. If we don't get something correct in the first moment, then it's like, okay, well, I'm throwing it away. So I feel like we live in this world of the microwave generation where sometimes things just need to marinate and sit in the oven for a little while. So be a little bit more patient with yourself and take some time. Everything, like Rome was not built in a day. And I think that we tend to forget that sometimes, that we think that everything is supposed to come together all in one shot. So my biggest takeaway for people is just have some grace. Have some grace with yourself. And that's it.
Listen, again, I want to say thank you for joining us here and dropping this insightful information. I appreciate everything that you're doing to help our people out, help the world out, help women out, because it's very necessary. And a lot of people don't give the attention to it the way that they need to, because we are so fixed on making money and entertainment. And so
Correct.
I just want to say thank you for what it is that you're doing.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. I appreciate being on and I'm just gracious that we have some listeners and there's some people out there that you and I can both help. I appreciate everything that you're doing for our people as well, because it is very, very, very much needed. So kudos to you as well.
Thank you. Thank you. So how can people get in contact with you if they want to, work with you, get your services, coaching, therapy, or anything that you're working on, or products or services that you have?
So I am on Instagram at Confidence Converter. I am also on Facebook as Confidence Converter. I just created a Facebook group for 2022, which is called Confidence Conversion. So I did a workshop a couple of weeks ago where it was all about being equipped with confidence walking into 2022. And then after that, I decided that I would create this Facebook group because everybody was like, when are you going to do this again? So because I don't always have the time to do a Zoom workshop, I'll just be doing some lives and that every once in a while, jumping into that. My website is also www.confidenceconverter.com. And just reach out to me, just book an appointment. Most of the time I like for people to just jump into my DMs and then I can talk to them that way and give them some insight to see whether or not I'm a good fit to even work with them first before I decide to create an appointment. So, but thank you for that.
Oh, no problem, no problem. So remember, my motto is always, always remember, greatness is a mindset. If you have greatness in your mind, it doesn't matter what your circumstances are, because if your greatness was your circumstances, you get removed from good circumstances and you would no longer be great. But because your greatness comes from your mind, then you can always continue to have greatness from within you. So you already know the motto is go be great. And I want you to always continue to keep being great. So now it's time for Ask Mr. Mindful Minute. So, Confidence Converter, what is your question for Mr. Mindful Minute?
Okay, so I know that you are an expert in a couple of different fields, relationships being one of them. So if you had a single person that came and sat in front of you and they were having issues with trying to get into a romantic relationship with someone, what would you tell them would be the best approach?
Okay, so there's more than one way to actually approach it, because if you're asking me, they're single and they're thinking about getting with an individual, correct? So they have this person in mind. It's not like, oh, they're just trying to say, well, I want to get back out there. They have this person in mind. I just want to make sure I got the context of the question. So the first thing that I would say do is ask yourself, why are you interested in this person?
Okay.
Because the reason that that's important, because that's going to help you to really identify if it's surface or if it's beyond surface. A lot of times we make decisions and they be very surface, and we now invest a lot of time and energy and resources into it, and we say, man, I want something that's beyond the surface now, and we're trying to figure out, why can't I get it to be beyond the surface? Well, that's because your intention behind it from the very beginning was not below the surface. So we have to ask, what is the reason that I really want to get into this or get involved in this? So some of the reasons that we may want to think about is it financially? Is it superficial? They look. Oh, is it because, oh, I know that they take care of kids and stuff like that? Well, is it because I'm looking just for companionship? I just want company and things like that. Or is it that you want to have a connection with this person because y'all notice when y'all have conversations and things like that, oh man, they kind of understand me and they get me and things like that. And we know that in the beginning, it's always good at the beginning, but once we start identifying why we are trying to be interested into this person in a romantic way, it's actually going to prepare us to actually say, now I know what my intentions is, and then I can ask them what are their intentions if they're interested with me, because I can come straight forward with them and say, hey, these are my intentions and this is what I would like to do. Are you interested?
Okay, good. So what would you say would be some of those underneath ideals? So you said under the surface. What would be some of those under the surface ideals?
So, a lot of the under surface things is, it's this song called See Beneath Your Beautiful, right? And the reason that I'm reflecting on that song in particular is because when you see beneath somebody's beautiful, you're looking at who they are. You're looking at their character. You're noticing the identifying marks about them, and it's not just what it is that they do; it's who they are. So some of the underneath things, yes, it's going to be things such as like how they raise their kids, but underneath them could be how they eat, how they take care of themselves. Oh, well, are you into, your health? Do you care about that? Oh, well, how often do you clean up? Like underneath thing is like, are you, you clean? Do you like to, how often do you clean your house? Oh, well, you only clean your house once a week? Okay, cool. You clean your house multiple times a week. Those are some things, because if we're talking underneath and we're talking longevity, we have to understand that life is short, but we make long-term decisions.
Okay, I
And so
like that.
if we making long-term decisions in a short life, then we have to say, am I going to be doing something long-term that I don't like?
Okay.
We
So if I
we
was a
have to
person
look.
that did, sorry,
Go ahead.
if I was a person that didn't know how to get in touch with finding out what my under the surface ideals was, what tools would you suggest in order for me to be able to get in tune with what am I looking for in that individual that wasn't surface level?
All right. So some of the things that I would automatically say, this is the easiest way to do it. Look at yourself. Ask some of the very same questions that you would ask somebody else about getting to know them. Do you have those same answers for yourself? Do you really know who you are as an individual? Do you know what your character? Are you the person that, no, I can get rah-rah, or no, that rah-rah is who I am? Like, okay, do I cuss sometimes, or cussing is just who I am? Because
Right.
you got to ask yourself, you can't ask somebody to give you something that you haven't given yourself. So if you know how to ask yourself these questions and answer them and be okay with those answers, then it will be that much easier for you to approach another person and actually say, okay, these are some of the things that make up who I am. Okay, so for an example, if you're a woman and you're interested in a man, well, what are some of the things that you want this man to be able to do? You want him to open your door? These are underlying things. Do you want him to open the door? There are a lot of men that don't open doors for women. But that may be something that you want. You want your man to open the door. Man, I feel good when my man open my door for me, not just my car door, the house door, restaurant door. If that's something that's underlying for you, those are the things that you might want to be asking. And again, how do you take care of yourself? Do you groom yourself on a regular basis? Do you get your nails done, or do you do? But you want to answer those things for yourself first, then you could go ahead and find it easier to ask that other person these things, because a lot of people will say, well, what it is that you bring to the table. And they're usually talking, monetary, but what you bring to the table is far more than monetary. Do you know how to cook? Do you even like to cook? So knowing
Right.
how to cook and liking to cook is two different things, but that's getting beneath the surface. Because a person can say, yeah, I know how to cook. And then y'all get together and they ain't never cooking. And you like, yo, I thought you knew how to cook. Yeah, I do know how. I just don't like to. You never asked me if I like to. And so what a woman should understand is what most men tend to do is we tell you what we think. We don't tell you how we feel. Because telling you
Okay.
how I'm feeling is different from telling you what I'm thinking.
So what questions would you suggest for a woman to be able to get a man to be able to tell them how they feel versus what they think?
So some of the things that I would say you should do, and I'm not going to say any specific questions, but what I would say do is if you want him to tell you how you feel, then you actually have to show him what that looks like to make him comfortable to actually be able to do that with you. Because it's not about him doing it with people. You just want him to do it with you.
Correct.
So by you creating that space and you nurturing it and you showing him what it looks like to be vulnerable, because maybe he doesn't know what it looks like to be vulnerable, because as men, we don't always know what it looks like to actually be vulnerable, because we're always told you got to get it done no matter how you feel, and you got to execute, and you got to do this, you got a family to take care of. And it's just like, well, we don't have an opportunity to let up. As a man, in our head, we are told and conditioned we have to have the answers. And if we don't have the answers and we don't know what we're doing, it's like, well, a woman may say to a man, well, I'm supposed to trust you with my life and my family, and you have no goals, no plans, and no this. Well, so I have to have everything together and before I can actually approach myself to you. And if I don't have it together, well, I'm going to start getting confused and nervous and upset because you're asking me some questions that are very, very important. But I'm not upset at you for asking the questions. I'm more upset because I don't have the answer and I don't know how to tell you I don't know how to have the answer. So I'll just show that as frustration and aggravation. And so now it'll make it more comfortable if the woman actually says, this is what I'm doing, and this is what I would like to do, and these are some. So you creating that space for him and showing him what vulnerability looks like, and then he can say, okay, how do you feel about what it is that I just said? You didn't even ask him to express himself. You asked him to express what he felt about what you said about yourself. So that was something that you could.
I like it. I love that insight. I love that. And I appreciate you being able to be that open and vulnerable yourself, because I'm sure that had to come from a place of vulnerability in order for you to be able to say that to me. So I truly, truly appreciate that answer from you. And for me, even being a life coach and being a therapist, sometimes I don't have the answers coming from a male point of view. So when I sit down and I talk to men, I try to be open to be able to pull in all of that information so that then when I'm talking to some females or some women, then I can express that to them like, listen, I got this from the source. So I'm telling you that this is how you need to approach this particular subject in order for you to be able to move forward and be the best that you could be, even in your relationships. Because I think that even in your relationship, you have to be able to bring some level of confidence to that relationship. So what you just did for me, Mr. Mindful, is you gave me some confidence and some self-esteem as to how to move forward in a relationship if I choose, to so have one. So thank you for that. So let's talk about finances. How do you feel that finances work in relationship? I'm talking about a romantic relationship now, or even a marriage. What's the best approach that couples can take when it comes to building finances in their relationships? And part two of that question is, do you feel like people should have separate bank accounts, or they should have joint bank accounts, or both?
Okay, so there is obviously a lot of ways that we can answer that, right? But the most important thing is we have to get down to the real nitty gritty. Is this all coming into one household? Because we're talking about being in a romantic relationship. We're talking about maybe marriage or being a life partner and things like that. Okay, we're both bringing something of value to the table. And so if we're both bringing something of value, that doesn't have to mean monetary, because I may not make the type of money that you make, but I may know how to budget better than you know how to budget. So now I'm saving you money. I'm saving us money. That's finances. See, finances is not just, oh, I know how to make money, but it's also, do you know how to spend money? Do you know how to budget money? Do you know how to save money? And a lot of times we don't think about that. And so when we have those type of conversations and actually say, okay, how do you view money? Because my view on money may be different from how you view money. You may say, well, money is not that deep and that third. Okay, but we do understand that money is what controls our lifestyle. And so if money controls our lifestyle, we need to know how to use it in a way that is going to benefit the unit as a whole, not just you or I as individuals. Because when you try to play a team game as an individual, you automatically lose from the very jump.
Yes, I agree.
And so I'm a firm believer to say, if I trust you with my body, the most sacred thing of me, nothing else is important. My body is the most important thing to me. If I trust you with my body, meaning we're being intimate, then why wouldn't I trust you with my finances? So I'm not going to trust you with one thing and not trust you with something else. So, okay, there are some people that'll say, well, I don't trust him or I don't trust her with my money, but you trust them with your body? We don't really think about that here.
Right.
Because what's more important, you can make up the money, you can get money back. You don't get another body.
Correct.
That's it. So when we look at it from that standpoint and we now say, oh, if I know how to control me, then we'll understand how to control what's outside of us. And so when we start looking at it from that standpoint, it'll make it a lot easier, but we got to have those questions as far as, what areas of finance are you good at? Are you good at budgeting? Do you know how to do taxes? Do you know how to do this? Do you know how to do that? And then what you say you know how to do, now I'll come to you and tell you what it is that I know how to do. And now we create synergy. We don't compromise, because compromise means somebody loses something. But synergy is we can actually create something that's better than what we both could have thought. So now we both benefit. And so to answer your second question, as far as I think that people should have their own bank account, I believe that people should have their own bank account, but not for the reason that most people will say that they should. You should have a bank account, he should have a bank account, and then y'all should have a joint bank account together. And that you should do this is because if one of you happens to die, we're just going to be real here. If one of you happens to die, well, what is going to happen if you now not a registered person on their account? What if y'all not married? What if y'all just life partners and things like that? You can't now go into their account if they die and things unless y'all they had a living will. And that's another conversation that most people
Yes.
don't even talk about, because your will and things like that, that's a part of finance. What are we going to do if this happens? We know that this is the reality. And so I would say that that's something that you should be able to do. And then you actually should have, I look at it from this standpoint, you should have multiple bank accounts, because we can actually allocate what's going to take care of what. And now that'll actually help us to the whole unit as a whole. Okay, I'm going to deposit this amount of money into this account. You're going to deposit this amount of money into this account. Now let's go this deep. What if only one person works? This is why I said what you bring to the table as finances is not always monetary. Well, okay, the other person doesn't work, which is fine, but they are the ones that's saying like, no, I'm looking at the budget, I'm looking at the numbers, and if we do it like this, we'll be able to pay these bills, and not just pay these bills, we'll be able to save a little here, and not just save, we actually can also get rid of some of our debt, and we can do this, that, and the third. And oh, you know what? I think that this is how much we need so we can have our food, and oh, this is what we're going to do so we can actually still be able to spend time together and go out and go to the movies or whatever it is that we want to do. So that's very important, knowing each and every aspect of the finance.
I love it. The biggest thing that just resonated with me was when you said synergy as opposed to compromise. Because I don't think a lot of people take that into consideration. And you're correct. When you compromise, that does mean that one person wins and one person loses. And I feel like in a relationship, there is no win, there is no loss. It's about the togetherness that you guys are be able to move forward on one accord. I really, really love that about the synergy. I appreciate you saying that finances is not all about just the monetary part of it and being able to budget, or whether or not your wife or your husband is able to say, well, we should be doing this with the money, or we should be doing that with the money. But so important, what you also said is, how do you trust me with your body and not be able to trust me with your money? Like that just went down like so deep. Like, because most people don't think about it that way. It's like it's okay for us to be in some type of intimate relationship, but when it comes to the money, you're like, no, I don't trust her with my money. I don't trust him with my money. But trust is trust. So if you don't trust me with your money, then you can't possibly trust me with your body. So I really, really like that.
Thank you.
Love it, love it, love it. All right, I think I'm good. I think you shared some gems for me, boy. Definitely will be on point with watching your podcast, because you are dropping some knowledge, my brother. Definitely dropping some knowledge.
Well, I truly appreciate it. I'm glad this was helpful to you and anybody else that is watching this. So remember, greatness is within you. And I'm Mr. Mindful Minute. Go be great.